Sensationally silver, because you are.
Welcome, everyone, to Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind, conversations with extraordinary, ordinary persons of age, people who are going to bring you information, inspiration, and validation. Join us. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind, conversations with extraordinary, ordinary persons of age. My guest today is Jennifer Parks. She is a funeral arrangement counselor, which sounds comforting to me. That's your job, right,
That's
Jennifer?
my job.
To be comforting. Yes.
Yes.
Um, I want to just plunge in, but I do want to tell our audience, those of you who aren't looking at this, it won't matter to you. Those who are watching the video of it, Jennifer is not 60 years old or older. All of my guests up to now have been, but she's not. I decided to make an exception because she has some important things to say to those of us of age, especially if we have not taken care of the details of what's going to be done with this body when we're not in it anymore.
That's right.
Right. Okay. So, Jennifer, welcome, and tell us why people avoid doing this.
Well, I think for a lot of reasons, but mostly because they don't want to think about the eventuality of not being here, of missing their loved ones, of leaving their kids, of their life ending. It's a sad kind of thing. My dad always says, the closer you get to it, the less you want to talk about it. And and I think that's true for most people. But I also believe that we have distanced ourselves so much from this process of death and caring for people, caring for our families. We outsourced that a long time ago, because before the last pandemic, families took care of their own. The women prepared the bodies, and the men dug the hole and built a casket. And families together honored their dead. And then things got overwhelming. Times change and things modernize, and people die in hospitals and nursing homes and all kinds of places, not necessarily at home anymore. And death became scary. That was something kind of yucky. And so what I've tried to do over the course of my work is to sort of destigmatize this process and invite families back in to caring for their loved ones, and also starting the conversation about not necessarily what happens after we die. That's a conversation for somebody different than me, but this vessel that honors our life deserves honoring, and the life that was lived deserves celebrating. And so that celebration could look like a backyard barbecue. It could look like a disco dance party. It could look like a church service traditionally that you remember from your grandmother in your mind. But by and large, mostly Americans, I think all humans, struggle with the eventuality of not being here. And so they avoid it.
It occurs to me that there is a lot of fear around death, and not all of it now is leaving the body, which may have fear attached to it. But some of it is just what you're saying, the lack of familiarity with this process that nobody gets to avoid. It is part of life.
Absolutely.
It's a certainty. But because, as you were saying, it happens off stage so often, people aren't intimately involved with that whole transitional process. So then it becomes scary because and I'm assuming also there may be a little bit of superstition around it. Like if I
Sure.
think about this or talk about it too much, I'm inviting it, and I don't want to do that.
That's absolutely the truth. You know, um, they think if I talk about death, it's going to happen sooner rather than later. But like I remind people, you know, talking about sex doesn't make you pregnant. So it's kind of the same philosophy. Um, you know, and if you look at it on the other side of things, what happens if you plan? What happens if you decide to face it head on and just say, you know, I'm gonna write down some things that I want done that are important to me, that honor my life and my legacy and who I am as a person. And, you know, what happens is somebody gets to see that and say, oh, I know exactly what she wanted. I know this is mom, you know, like this is absolutely mom. My mom says, do not wear black to my funeral. I want every color of the rainbow. Like she's joyful, she's cheerful, that would just not be her scene. You know, I've had families who had a woman who came and planned the party of her life, and she had it before she died. She knew she was dying. And so she invited all of her friends to come and tell amazing stories about her and have lunch with her and listen to music and look at her artwork, and they got the opportunity to say goodbye. And I've had families struggle sitting in the arrangement room saying between siblings, mom didn't like blue. Why would you even consider a blue casket? You know, so death brings out the worst in people, honestly, because it's a stressful, emotional, totally overwhelming time. And so if you have a guidebook, then you're like, oh, look, here's the map.
Yeah. I don't have to make this decision, and neither
Yeah,
do you,
yeah,
because this person who we're honoring here has made those decisions, has given us that map.
that's right.
So tell me, if you can, if you will, one of the most, or maybe a couple of the most outrageous kinds of ways of dealing with this transition that you've had.
Yeah. Well, you know, by and large, humans are funny, and part of probably the most important part of our job is to listen, because you can really understand where people are and what they need and where they need you to be. Because our job is to take all of that stress and burden off of this family, and guide them through the process of making good decisions that will comfort them and that will honor the life that was lived and the relationship that they had with that person. It doesn't always go that way. I mean, I had a wife of a man who died and his sister, and they couldn't agree on burial or cremation. And so the sister asked me, can you bury half of him? And I thought to myself, huh. I said, I'm sorry, I need some clarification. Are you asking if we can bury half of his body and cremate the other half? And she said, yes. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. No, we can't do that. I said, we can divide his cremated remains and bury half of them in the cemetery and keep the other at home. But I'm sorry, you're going to have to agree on a decision. And so people don't think in grief. I'm thinking to myself, which half? Like, who's doing that? You know,
Top to bottom, through the middle. Oh my
exactly.
goodness. Yeah.
So, you know, and of course, if you're in your right mind, you would never ask that question. But um, as a grieving mother, I can understand, you know, having been in that situation myself, like your brain doesn't work right. And your head feels like it's filled with cotton and you just can't make a decision. So, I mean, I've had joyful, I've had chaotic, I've had people tell me just throw her away in the garbage. You know, I I don't we are not here to judge your relationship with your loved one. We're here to simply uh, create an experience that will honor their life and help you make good decisions. Of course, that horrified me because I'm thinking, who would throw their mother away in the garbage? But again, I don't know that background. But I have taken care of the very tiniest to the very oldest and everything in between. And I had a woman who was 108 years old. She was the most beautiful African American woman. She had no wrinkles. She was just gorgeous and she smelled like roses. And when she was 104, I met her and I got to spend time with her. And I said, "Oh, I bet you have so many stories." And she looked at me dead in the eyes and she said, "I am so bored." And I was like, "I bet you are." Because she had danced in the 40s in nightclubs and jazz clubs, and she had boyfriends and husbands, and your life gets so small when you're that old. And then she finally passed when she was 108. And um, and she was magnificent. And I mean, there's so many stories. I had a man who, um, in the same day, I made arrangements with a man for his wife, and he told me that he was in Hitler's youth and that the Holocaust never happened. And all these stories about living in Germany during World War II. And he was 10 years old when he was in Hitler's youth. And then at the end of the day, at about 4:30 in the afternoon, I met with a man whose dad was captured prisoner of war during World War II, liberated by the Russians. And he was a Jew from New York, who wrote a book called In the General's House. And he absolutely said that the Holocaust happened. So the stories and to get both of those on the same day was insane. Like,
And that's the truth for each of those people. That's what they carry in their heart. They're not going around lying.
Right.
That's what they've experienced. That's what they carry as a memory.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just sit there and say, "What? Listen, tell me more."
Yeah.
I need more information.
I had a friend who told me that after her mother's service, she and her two sisters, and that was the whole family, that's all there was of the family, was the three sisters, got into a terrible, terrible screaming fight out in the parking lot.
Yeah.
And I bet that happens sometimes.
That happens. It happens. People's emotions just boil over. There's every facet of grief that you can think about. Regret. Why didn't I say that? Why didn't I do that? Why didn't I spend more time? There's anger from childhood. There's bitterness between siblings. Mom liked you better. Why do you think you're in charge? All of the things that happen. Money, that's also a big thing. Who's going to get what? And so if those things aren't planned for, it creates chaos.
You're fueling that possibility
Mhm.
with not taking charge of those decisions, right?
Right.
Leaving them, just like the stories you told of the two people who had these totally different views of Germany during those years, such different views of what that family meant, what the relationships were, and then from those places to try to make these decisions on behalf of this person.
Right.
I know in my life, my sister and I had completely different experiences growing up in the house we grew up in. Right. I mean, if you heard each of us, you would think we didn't even know each other. And that happens.
That does.
Absolutely. So the clarification needs to come from the person who's going to be the one that the whole decision-making process is about. Have you ever had people who come to you make some decisions that you really wish they wouldn't? And what do you do with that? If somebody says, "This is what I want, I don't want that."
We have a conversation. I try really hard to listen to the in between, because sometimes they're saying things one way, they really mean something else, you know. I mean, probably the biggest thing is I don't want any services. And that stems from I don't want to create a fuss. I don't want people fussing over me. I don't want them spending money. I don't want, you know, and that could have to do with your own value of who you are and how you contributed to your family. And, you know, they might not feel like they deserve it, that their kids won't care, that, you know, they live far away. I don't have any friends. You know, nobody will come, those kinds of things. And that's fine. I mean, and in some cases that is the case, but a celebration doesn't need to look like anything specific. There are no rules anymore. And what our parents did and what their parents did is completely different from today. Today looks like going to your favorite restaurant and or her favorite restaurant or his favorite restaurant, or going to the golf course and playing around a golf and laughing and telling stories. And that may look like a big, huge party, you know, catered affair. You may be an artist and all your artwork's on display. There are a million ways to celebrate a life, but only the right way is what's right for the life that was lived. And planning for your own funeral doesn't have to be sad. It could be having wine, and there is a website that it's called something different now, but and you'll have to bleep me if it's not okay to say this, but it's called Get Your Shit Together. .com. And basically this woman had 3 small children under like 6 years old. Her husband took care of all of the finances. He raced bicycle racing. And so one morning he said, I'm going to go out. He was training for a race. And she said, please don't go. I need to get these kids ready. I got to get dinner, you know, breakfast on the table. I got to get these kids to school or wherever they were going. And he's like, no, I'll be back in an hour. You know, I'll be back in an hour. Well, he was killed by a semi. And it took her 20 weeks to get access to her money, to get, to be able to, I mean, she had to rely on friends and family to feed her kids. She couldn't pay her mortgage. She couldn't buy gas. I mean, she had no idea where the passwords were. Everything was on his computer. She didn't take care of that part of taking care of the household. So what do you do when you're a mother of 3 and you have kids to feed and no access to money? So putting these things down on paper is just loving. You take care of your whole family. As parents, we take care of our family. As grandparents, we take care of our kids and grandkids. This is an extension of taking care.
That's a beautiful way of putting it, to say that it's a loving thing to, and I can see why in that family, people weren't making plans.
No.
Here's this young family with little kids. You think, well, this isn't relevant to our lives now.
Right.
Maybe in 30 years or something, we can start talking about this.
Right.
But, you know, it occurred to me when you said that people these days are so determined sometimes to have prenuptial agreements. If they're going to do that, they might add this in.
Yes, right.
This is what I want. This is what I don't want. Because usually when you have a prenuptial agreement anyway, there is something in the estate. People have been around for a little while. That's why
Right.
it has to be protected, or whatever the phrase would be. But to address this part, you're making me think about a lot of things that I haven't thought about, Jennifer. Yeah, just
Think about, would your daughter know if you want to be buried or cremated?
yes, she does know.
Because
Yes,
you've had that conversation.
yes, yes.
There are many, many families who have no idea.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, I don't know what mom wanted.
yeah.
Well, her mom was buried, but you look at the cemetery expense and the cost of a casket and funeral and all the things that go along with that, and they go, mom didn't plan for any of that. So we're looking at $20,000 for cemetery space. And do we have $20,000?
And do we even know if that's what she wanted?
Yeah.
Which is a very important part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it can be fun. You could have just to get your shit together party and have, write down the pertinent information. Tell your friends what you want. I tell my sister all the time, I want a disco dance party. I want Studio 54 and I want glitter in my cremated remains so that I can be the confetti at the party. And she says, you got it. And then she says, I want to be a diamond on a diamond because you can make cremated remains into diamonds. And so she wants a diamond. And then she wants her ashes scattered between second and third, the hot corner on a little league baseball field, because that's where her best memories are raising her kids, was on a baseball field. So, it can be fun. It is loving. It is being so unselfish. And it's a moment of being uncomfortable. And then you don't have to think about it anymore. Once it's done, it's done. And you can even put it down on paper, pay for it ahead of time, pay for it over time. There's lots of ways to do it.
And I think one of the really important things that's coming across, Jennifer, is, and I hope this isn't just true for you, I'm hoping it's true for the whole industry, that there are no rules and you can create your own experience,
Right.
or create the experience you want other people to have
Yes.
around your passing.
Yes. I mean, I love what I do, and I have really, there is such honor and sacredness in the work that we do. And it is such a privilege to be able to be just a little tiny part or get a glimpse into this love story. And to me, there is no more trust and absolute honor than for you to say, please take care of my dad, because I promise that I will. And that relationship, I understand that, and I can only relate this to myself. My 17-year-old son died tragically 3 years ago. He was hiking and he suffered a heat stroke. And I have worked with my colleagues for a very long time. It was a completely and utterly devastating, overwhelming, heartbreaking, everything, gut-wrenching, everything you can imagine, right? And I thought to myself, everything I've ever said to a family is just stupid. Like, the words don't matter. And then my colleagues took care of my son. They bathed him, they brushed his hair, they dressed him, they took care of him like he was theirs. And I could never repay that gift, ever. The gift of knowing that he was safe, that he was being cared for, and that he was in loving hands, I was so grateful for. And then I realized what we do. Like, I've been doing this a long time, but that realization was like, it isn't just the words, it's the way we act, the way we conduct ourselves, the way we care for people, the way we hold it together so that you can get through this immediate, because we need funerals or celebrations or whatever you want to call them, gatherings. We need community when something like this happens. From the very beginning of time, human beings grieve communally. We need people. And so that gathering, that caring for, that tending that we do for the body allows us to begin the journey of grief.
To honor that transition.
Yeah.
And to honor this physical vehicle that has carried that being,
yes,
while they were present, thinking and feeling here on earth, to honor
yes,
that, to honor the life. What a powerful experience. I mean, no one would wish that on anyone, to
No.
lose their child. But having had all that experience in this field,
Yeah.
and to have it become so personal and be able to look at it from a completely different perspective,
Yeah.
and then integrate that. I know when we talked about you being my guest, Jennifer, you told me that today more funeral directors are women than men, and that has not been the case historically.
Well, it was always kind of a good old boys club. It was not something any little girl when she was little thought, oh, I want to be a funeral director. That just wasn't the norm um, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s. But I think women as natural caregivers really, I mean, look, we can run companies, we can run households, and it takes being compassionate, empathetic, and organized to create these, what I always like to say, we pull off like a wedding in 3 days, from the time somebody dies to actually doing the funeral service and all the coordination that needs to happen, all of the pieces down the line. Sometimes it's 3 days. I've had somebody die at 2 o'clock in the morning and I buried him at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And it sometimes it just works that way, but you just have to be really organized. And this is not our grief to carry. The families that we serve, this is their grief. So it is an emotionally, physically, and spiritually taxing job. The work is hard. But if we can look at it as what I do is love, what I do is take care of people and honor the relationship and honor the life that was lived, then I am helping. And so the grief doesn't stick to me.
I imagine that anyone who's watching, listening, is thinking, why did this person choose this career?
It was an accident. So my background's in medicine. I lived in San Francisco. I worked with an OBGYN and I was a doula. And I moved to Santa Barbara after I had my first child, and my best friend's parents owned this mortuary at the time. And I got pregnant with twins, and I didn't want to. I was working for a cosmetic dermatologist in Southern Marin, and I didn't want to commute anymore, basically. And so she said, come work for me. And I said, absolutely not. I will cry every day. I mean, like, there's no way. And so in the beginning, I just started, and then she talked me into it. So, and then I said, okay. And so then I just started sort of taking care of the office part of things. And then a baby came in, a mom who had lost her baby at term. She had a maternal fetal hemorrhage, and the baby died about 12 hours later. Picture perfect pregnancy, picture perfect healthy mama, and a random accident. Her body just all of his blood drained into her body. And when that family called and I answered the phone, and there was an instant connection. So then I kind of helped guide them through the process, and then I was hooked. I was like, this is my perfect work, and I am in my perfect place. And so that journey began sort of everything. And I was doing making memorial folders for a family at Kinko's, and it was midnight. And one of the ministers for that same service was there printing her sermon for that service the next day. And she looked at me and I looked at her, and she said, this really is your ministry, isn't it? I said, it is. I mean, this is who I am and what I do.
It's so fascinating to me how our life path catches us unaware.
Oh, yeah.
The same thing happened for me in the field of addiction. I never wanted to work in the field of addiction. Thought it was really tacky, wanted to work with real families with real problems. Oh, I actually said that. And I was so blessed that someone asked me to work in this field, and one job led to another. And my life has just unfolded in the most magical way because of that career path.
Yeah.
So we get
Happy
chosen.
accidents.
Yeah, we get chosen. It's not even our decision at first. It's something we're resisting, and then we kind of fall in love with the whole
Yeah.
thing.
Well, it's their stories, right? I mean, that's what I'm here for. Like, I love the firsthand accounts of I had a woman who was 106. She was one of 200 secretaries in the FBI, and she met her husband, who was a G-man, and he did stakeouts on Al Capone. And I'm like, who gets these stories? Like, you know, so we're privileged,
Yeah.
just privileged to be here and to bear witness to these lives.
And it sounds like in many ways, I mean, there are all the details, there are all the nuts and bolts kinds of things that have to happen. But those stories and the relationship, the relating of the stories, the listening to the stories, the sharing,
Yeah.
sounds like really the most important part of all. And what you said is so pertinent. You don't have to carry the gift, the grief. Your gift is making everything go smoothly so that people can deal with what they're dealing with.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you don't have to be sad with them. You just have to have empathy
Yeah.
and know what you're doing and be able to listen.
I have been sad. I have, you know, Jake taught me when he was like in about the third grade, Mama, if you're going to cry, just do math in your head. So that's what I do. If I'm going to cry, I just do math in my head.
Yeah. Because of course they don't need to be dealing with you and your
Right,
sadness.
right.
They have enough of their own, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So as we wrap up here, and this doesn't have to be about funerals, but what do you want to say to the people who are listening, who are watching today? What do you want to close with?
Don't be afraid. Just get busy living your life and talk about what happens when you die, what's important to you. It's not scary or hard. It doesn't have to be formal. Like, you don't have to go and sit with a trust attorney or create your will. I mean, all those things are really good to do. Get a durable power of attorney for healthcare put in place. You know, have those legal decisions made. That's great. But mostly just have the conversation with your family once in a while. It could be over dinner. I had a family who in 1981 he bought plots at Santa Barbara Cemetery. And Christmas Eve dinner, they're all sitting down to this beautiful table, and he hands her an envelope and he says, "Honey, I bought us a beach house." Because their plots were right on the edge of the cliff at the Santa Barbara Cemetery. They're overlooking the ocean. He said, "Honey, I bought us a beach house." So it doesn't have to be scary. It just it could be business-like, it could be a transaction, or it could be setting, you know, writing thoughts down in a journal.
One of the most overused phrases now from my former field is dysfunctional families, dysfunctional family of origin, dysfunctional family. And dysfunctional families, if you understand the definition, it isn't about families that have problems. Every family has problems.
Right.
Sooner or later, there are always problems. It's the secrets that make for the dysfunction, that make for the discomfort, and the no-go areas, the places where we don't talk about that. We
Right.
don't even talk about not talking about that. It's just in the air. And what I'm hearing from everything that you're saying, Jennifer, is take away the secrecy. Make this a part of life, because it is a part of life.
Yes.
Take away the fear. Make it, I mean, that's one of the great gifts we get from having pets. They don't last as long as we do unless we're having parrots or tortoises
Right.
in our life.
Exactly.
They go before we do, and we get to cry, we get to grieve, we get to bury them, do whatever we're going to do with that little body or big
Yeah.
body, whatever, and we get to say goodbye.
That's
and
right.
practice saying goodbye. So everything that you're saying today to me is saying this just makes life bigger, more open, richer, more real, more honest.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's a gift.
And it's not something you have to belabor.
Yeah.
It's not an ongoing task. Unless you change your mind, of course, which you certainly can do. But just have it. Hey, I bought a beach house. And, and then I'm not Catholic anymore. Let's not do that. Let's have a party in the park and, connect with nature, whatever it is. Like, it's easy if you just get rid of the fear. Pretend you're doing it for somebody else. If it's really, really if it's so if you're so fearful, just pretend you're doing it for somebody else.
And in a way you are, because you're doing it for everybody who loves you.
That's right.
Would have to make those decisions without your participation.
And what a gift you have that people, that you have family that would care.
It occurred to me too, when you were talking about all the ways that people can celebrate, if they're far, far apart and someone thinks nobody will come, like you were saying, this Zoom thing, the magic of that, you can have the whole family right there telling their stories.
Yes.
And learning more about this person, learning more about the history, their own history, all of it. Lots of magic in that.
And people don't die as long as we're talking about them, as long as we remember them, you're not really dead. And I tell people all the time, well, they're not really here, but they're not gone, and those are for different people, your faith journey, your whatever, however you get to comfort and healing is completely personal. But talking about death is not going to make you dead. I promise.
Yeah.
I mean, unless it's your time and your ticket gets pulled, but it's it doesn't invite it in.
I have a doctor who's been my guest a couple of times, and one of the things he says is make friends with your death.
Yeah.
Because it's so liberating.
Yeah.
It makes you more alive.
Well, and I think the regret, I think people they don't want to talk about it because they haven't gotten busy living yet. Mm-hmm. So they're absolutely terrified that they're going to die before that happens. But we forget. Like I always say, the most precious gift that this job has given me is we get the reminder to be right here, right now, every day. And it's so important it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what circumstances you're in, how much money you have. You can get busy living right now. And it's not too late because you're still breathing. And I would encourage everybody to go take the dance class, go on the trip, paint a painting, go lay in the grass, put your feet in the ocean. Whatever that looks like for you, get busy doing it because time goes like that.
All right. Well, with those very, very, very encouraging and wise words, we're going to close for today. Jennifer, thank you so much for being my guest. And thank you to all of you who have joined us today. See you next time. Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind, is sponsored by Sensationally Silver, a complete hair care product line created especially for people with hair like ours, naturally gray and white hair. Sensationally Silver products can be found exclusively at sensationallysilver.com.
Sensationally silver.